I'm speaking with Carsten Schneider, first secretary of the German Social Democratic Party's parliamentary group, about the SPD's tough decision between government and opposition. Welcome.
Hello.
Thanks. Hello.
Mr. Schneider, opinion polls gauge that approval for the SPD party has sunk to 15.5% throughout Germany. How does it feel to have lower ratings than even the right-wing populist AfD party?
It bothers me a lot. I do think it shows a real trend, but I don't think the AfD is stronger than the SPD. Aside from that, approval for the SPD is far too low. And a large part of that is due to all the back and forth we allowed ourselves in the past weeks. That needs to come to an end now. We need to agree to the coalition deal, join Germany's government, and use this work to restore our old strength, or at least an appropriate amount of strength.
You say old strength, but are you just a bit tougher than some of your party comrades? After all, you won the parliamentary election in your home state Thuringia with just 13.2%.
Yes, I'm more accustomed to these kinds of ups and downs than some older colleagues from more stable areas like Hamburg or North Rhine-Westphalia. It's volatile. Voter approval shoots up rapidly. I've also won parliamentary elections with 42% and lost a year later with just 14%. That shows how quickly things can change. But yes, I can handle it. I know approval can dwindle rapidly, but that you can regain trust with hard work, and voting results aren't permanent approval rates.
That's what you're working on right now. You just came back from the SPD's regional conference, where the party's member vote between government or opposition was discussed. What was the mood like?
Towards the party leadership, it was fairly cautious, but it was more positive regarding the coalition agreement. There was substantive debate on the points we had negotiated with the Christian Democratic Union. Everybody knows that 70% of the agreement bears the SPD signature, and that is met with a lot of support. Not for everything, but for about 90%. And they know we can keep these promises. We currently have trust issues with the SPD leadership, and that includes me. I'm aware of it, and know it needs to change. First of all, we need to be given the chance to continue taking responsibility. That's the deciding point. If that goes wrong, everything about the membership vote is wrong. Now I think we need to focus on keeping a direct course towards Social Democrats taking part in the government. And towards Germany taking an affirmative and defining role in Europe that's positive. Not like the rejection the AfD or the classical liberal FDP parties have voiced in Parliament. Then I think things will work out.
You personally also advocate another coalition with the CDU. But the last two times, the SPD emerged weakened by working with the union. Why should this time be any different?
If I were trying to be funny, I'd say because we can't get any weaker. But realistically, it's wrong to conclude that the coalition or the disparate political priorities within the coalition are to blame for our bad election results. There was more to it than just that, and it wasn't just about whether to govern with the Conservative Union or the Socialist Left Party. I think the main issues are that the SPD needs higher recognition value within the coalition. We need to address future topics in addition to daily management. And we need to realize that in this legislation, we don't have one large coalition. We have one Bundestag that consists of 6 party factions, in which the SPD and CDU combined make up only 53%.
Those opposing another grand coalition also argue that they always leave the SPD weaker than before. Do you think Kevin Kühnert, head of the SPD's youth organization, is justified in this position and in leading the campaign against the grand coalition?
I think it's very acceptable in a democratic process of generating political will.
Even when he tried rallying new members to join and vote against the coalition?
No, that's wrong. He was against that.
At first, he said we're campaigning for people to join the party and vote no.
No, it was the youth socialist leader in North Rhine-Westphalia who talked about paying €10 membership for 2 months. Afterwards, he clearly stated, and I agree with him, that new members are always welcome. And by the way, we already have very many who want to vote in favor of the coalition. But they have to commit to social democratic goals for the long term. Considering the spectacle we've made of ourselves lately, I don't suppose the SPD is particularly en vogue right now. But we are nevertheless Germany's strongest party, based on membership numbers. And I think a large part of the population shares our basic values. In that case, we lost in the last election for many reasons. One of them was the refugee situation, the elephant in the room that the SPD never talked about. And then,
what should the SPD have done?
Well, our big mistake was that we didn't even talk about it. It affected so many people. And when families have heated arguments about it at home, but the main parties leave the topic out completely, then it's understandable they no longer feel represented. And yes, that was a mistake.
Now, at the regional conferences, you are advocating for the coalition deal, saying that it's quite substantive and that you are able to govern. But the decisive SPD vote on the matter is tainted by the fact that it includes new members of whom you can't be sure if they only join the SPD to reject the coalition. They make up about 5.2%, or roughly 24,000 new members. Aren't the results distorted, no matter what they are?
No, the result will be a democratic one.
But new members could tip the scale.
Yes, that's true. Everybody knew that right from the onset. That's how it was the last time too. And I think we Social Democrats are living democracy in its purest form. Our members aren't some kind of voting cattle. Each has a right to vote, just like me, and I'm sure many new members are going to stay a long while. Not only young people who joined, the age group was very diverse, and there are plenty who want to vote in favor of the coalition because they think the agreement is good and want the country to have a stable SPD party. The SPD is vital to this country.
Everyone expects the vote to be close. What happens if the SPD rejects the coalition agreement? Will it sink further towards 10%? Is this the path to political suicide?
Well, I plead to vote yes, and I'm completely focused on that one goal. I don't even consider it going any other way. Just like the German football team in Russia certainly isn't thinking about what would happen if they are eliminated in the very first matches. They're focused on winning. And when they focus, they'll succeed.
Former party leader Rudolf Scharping said a no vote could be fatal to the party.
Yes, I am sure this is a decisive turning point for our party as well as for all of Germany. This is the most important vote since it was founded.
The first time you were voted into parliament was in 1998. Back then, the SPD was entirely different. Gerhard Schröder became the chancellor, and you traveled to Bonn and said staying in the Bundestag any longer than 12 years just makes you soft in the head. You've now been there for 20 years. Has your hypothesis proven itself?
No, I think the only thing it proved was that 12 years can seem like an eternity when you're 22. It was pure chance that I was elected to the Bundestag. I just decided to run in my own electoral district where the SPD had never won before. I wanted to show that there were still young people engaged in shaping democracy. I never would have expected to get elected.
For years, you were the financial expert, and now, as right-hand man to current faction leader Andrea Nahles, you have all these other topics as well. Is this huge responsibility intimidating?
I certainly respect it, yes, but I'm not intimidated. I've known my colleagues for many years. I might still be one of the youngest, but within the faction I've served longer than most. A big part of organizing a party's faction is to have a sense for how your colleagues think and feel, and to be able to inspire them to go along in decisions and prepare them for it. Considering that, yes, I respect that very much. There are topics I'm not very well versed in yet, such as domestic and foreign policies, but I'm working on it.
The SPD wants to reinvent itself. You practically have to reinvent yourself too, with this much larger and heavier responsibility. That only works when you come to understand what happened in the past. Do you personally have any explanation for how Martin Schulz could drop in his approval ratings from 100% as the party leader to just 20.5% as a candidate for the chancellorship?
To begin with, I wouldn't ever wish for 100% approval rates for anybody, because it makes the burden they must bear too heavy and the expectations to fulfill them too high. The SPD will probably need a long time to restore its previous strength. And I don't mean 40-something, I'm talking about shooting for 30% approval rates. That's what it takes to be a decisive force in Germany, to be a serious choice when it comes to electing a chancellor.
If you had kept your word from back then, when you were first elected into parliament, you would have left the Bundestag a long time ago, would have become a bank clerk, and by now moved up to bank director. You'd have a quiet job, plenty of time for your family. Lots of things would have been different.
Yes, they would.
Would you have preferred that?
No, I wouldn't have. I made a conscious decision to enter the Bundestag, and it's an exhausting job, but also the challenge is exciting and different every day. It's a big responsibility and a big honor. And it's never boring. I think that's the best way to describe one's job.
Well, that certainly applies to the SPD in recent times. With that, I'd like to ask you to complete these sentences. Politics, especially when you're the parliamentary director of your party's faction, is never just a 9-to-5 job. What I want most for my children is
to be able to give them the time they need on the weekends, if not occasionally during the week.
When I go fishing, I'm particularly good at
switching off. When no fish bite, I'm left in peace.
Apropos fish, for the SPD to land more votes, I want to
restore its credibility. I think that's the key. I think many people have lost their faith in the SPD.
Carsten Schneider, herzlichen Dank für das Gespräch.
My pleasure.